Hello viewers, the fourth round of the Manufacturers Cup gave me an incredibly memorable yet difficult race here around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. I decided to go back to the Ferrari 296 and hoping that this car would give me some good luck, as it actually managed to win the 24-hour race overall a couple of years ago. Now, the last race out in the 458 Italia was pretty much a disaster. If you watched the previous video, you'll know why. But this time around in the 296, we're hoping to improve upon our very poor point scores in the last two rounds of 0. So moving into this one, back in the 296, seeing if we can get some points back on the board and get our championship campaign back underway. Now, practice didn't go too well initially, as you can see here, a really difficult corner, ending up facing barrier for a near perpendicular meeting, eventually setting a low 8:03, which was a solid time, which I was fairly happy with. Now, about 2.5 minutes before the race began, turns out that my PS Plus didn't work. So luckily enough, I was able to buy this again just before the timer counted down and I missed the race. But with that problem solved, we jump into qualifying. Qualifying around here is always an interesting phenomenon. 15-minute qualifying session. However, you only get one lap because you have to do the entirety of the whole 20 however many kilometers. I should probably know this by now. And so in order to save my tires, the tire wear wasn't the greatest here. I was just doing a very, very slow out lap. And I found myself a nice bit of space, as you can see, to make sure that we're not really having to get stuck behind anyone. This is the state of the tyres at the end of that long out lap. So not perfect, but it's pretty much the same for everyone. I just made sure that I didn't overcook the tyres on the out lap pretty much. And now it's a case of just trying to go out there and set the best lap we can with one attempt, one only in this qualifying session. Given, of course, it is a long lap, we're looking at over 8 minutes for a lap time. Now, this is the corner that caught me out in in the practice. Always a difficult corner to get right, the way that it elevates. No such problem this time around in qualifying. And actually, I felt like the lap was decent until this point, coming around Galgenkopf, the last corner onto the back straight. First time went down 8:08, and as I went through the sector here, I was 1 second up on that time. So I know it was decent. Plus, pretty much everyone else there was adding a time to the leaderboard was not going any quicker than the 8:08. So this was looking good. As we come down the hill towards Tiergarten, the last sequence of the lap, just need to make sure we don't overcook it. Really easy to do, given you have so much time to think about it. As we came round, it was a solid lap, and it's going to be good enough for pole position. Come on, what a lap! Now we hope that no one else goes quicker. There it is, guys. Look at that. Ferrari 1-2. We do have to decide tyres, actually. And this race is going to be a race of survival. I'm going to go on the soft tyre to begin with. See if I can last 3 laps and then go over to the medium at the end. Tyre wear is going to be horrific. Even on that second lap there, it felt pretty bad. So this is just a case of don't die. Now, quite a simple mission statement there of not dying. Now, we have 5 laps to do. Quite a long race, this one. And as I perhaps hinted at just a moment ago, the strategy wasn't immediately obvious. You had to use the soft tyre and the medium. The soft tyre can do 3 laps, however, it's not perhaps optimal or perhaps not the easiest strategy to do. And I decided to start on the soft tyre. Normally you'd start on the medium and then go over to the soft later, but I wanted to try and break away from the pack. We have another Ferrari 296 immediately in our tow, and this would actually set up a really good battle between the two of us. Now, of course, at this point here, I didn't really know what tyres the guy behind me was on. It's impossible for me to know, really, until we really get around a significant portion of this lap, and then I could work out if I have the better tyres or not. To begin with, he wasn't really staying completely with me, but also I wasn't really dropping him either, and so it wasn't immediately obvious if he was on the soft or medium. So at this point, it's just a case of keeping on going and just maximizing the tyre while we have it. So assuming the worst, that he is actually on the medium tyre, all I've got to do really is just try and push, open up that gap and capitalise on the soft tyres whilst they're still new. Towards the end of the Grand Prix section of the first lap, the gap was over a second, so it was going in the right direction. However, he was very much within my shadow and I wasn't quite able to pull away. So this is where experience comes in, I suppose. Just make sure we lap nice and cleanly and consistently. So there's quite a close pack in the cars behind. It was actually quite rare for me to get a pole position. However, I must be honest that my driver rating is a little bit lower than it probably ought to be. And so with around about 264 points on offer for first place, I'm perhaps in a lower level lobby than what would typically be my normal. However, you can only beat the opponents in front of you, and the guy in second there appeared to be very quick. So as we go through Arenberg here, a little bit wide on that turn, and actually I lose a couple of tenths to the car behind. So this only increased my perplexed nature of not knowing what tyres the car behind was on. In hindsight, it was quite obvious that it was actually, yes, the medium, because the gap kept increasing. By this point here, I was quite strong through this sector. It's probably my favourite part of the track, just after the carousel, and the gap kept climbing over 3 seconds by this point. So the first lap was, I would say, a success. It's hard to measure on a track like this because of its length. It obviously is not a typical racing lap length. It's much longer than normal, and so the gaps aren't quite what they would be in, let's say, a much shorter circuit like the Grand Prix track. End of the first lap then, pretty much, and onto the straight. The gap has been opened up to around 4 seconds, and that's what it looks like from his point of view. You know, I'm just a disappearing little speck in the distance by this point, and he does have actually someone for company back there. So rounding out the first lap, I think that was good. As noted on my qualifying session, the tyres do wear out quite quickly, and given, of course, again, the length of the track, you have to be very, very mindful of whether or not you're going to do an extra lap, because once you go past the pit lane, you are committed with the tyres that you're on. On the second lap, I managed to sort out my Arenberg, get a lot better. By this section, once again, just really flowing through here quite nicely. On the first lap, I gained about 4 seconds compared to second place. However, on this lap, the gap was a lot slower to increase. By this point here, it opened up to about 5 seconds. So I'd only really gained about 1 second on this second lap. And that just shows you the changing of the tide between the soft and the medium tyre. As you can see, the second place was just about keeping me within sight. Now, I did notice through this section here, this is just before the final straight, or the Dottinger Her, the long straight that rounds out the lap. The guy in second was actually incredibly fast through here, and the gap came down from 5 seconds to, well, a lot lower than 5 seconds, 4.4 by this point. And so this just began to make me question, is it the right thing to stay on this tyre or not? Should I be coming in for the mediums? Can the soft tyre actually last 3 laps? I've only gained like half a second on this lap. You see they're quite warm by this point. 1 extra lap could be a problem. However, an additional problem is that of traffic. So there's these multitude of things you have to consider. I decided just to try and stay towards the front of the pack as long as possible, and I stayed out, opting to go for the strategy of extending the soft tyres. You see the gap hovering around 4 seconds, and this is what I love about these races. Sometimes you're having a race with someone and you know that it's going to play out towards the end. Constantly monitoring the gap. It's not always going to be direct battling. It will become that at some point in this race, presumably though. Well, I can tell you, it will be. Through Arenberg for the 3rd time on the set of tyres. Again, a little bit wide, like I was on the first lap, so just the first sign there that the tyres are really beginning to go off. And the gap came down below 4 seconds for the first time there. And, well, the first time since he started gaining again, should I say. Obviously, it was below 4 seconds at the start of the race. Things are going not to plan on the second lap. 1.8 seconds down on my PB. and that was only about a third of the way into the lap. And so by the time we got onto the Dottinger, at the end of lap number 3, the gap was down to just over 2 seconds. And so there was no doubt that the Portuguese driver here was absolutely gaining on me. Around about 3 seconds on this lap alone. You can see the problem I had was traffic. That's the reason I didn't really want to pit at the end of the second lap. I would have come out probably behind a lot of people and I would have got slowed down even further. So it's just one of those things about starting where I started at the front. That extra consideration, and in hindsight the medium might have been better. But let's take a look at the pit stop then. Diving to the right hand side, this is a crucial moment of the race, and it does confirm there on the top left of the screen that indeed I was on the soft and he was on the medium. And therefore for the second half of the race, it's going to be the other way around. He's going to be on the faster tyre, and he wasn't that far behind me. So this could be a really tricky second half of this race. Now fortunately here, you see there, just briefly, the Portuguese driver taking on some fuel, and that loses him maybe 2 seconds. I was just monitoring the fuel throughout the course of the race to make sure that I had enough, roughly 20% per lap. I mean, 100 divided by 5 is 20, and I was keeping just above that, so it was okay. 3.7 or 4 seconds the gap now to the Portuguese driver. So thankfully I managed just to open up that gap once again, because he was gaining a little bit too quickly on that third lap. We do have a Spaniard out there in the lead. He has to pit because you do have to use both sets of tyres, so I'm not really worried about them. The only problem might be if I get stuck behind them towards the end of this lap. Now halfway through lap number 4, the Portuguese driver was really getting the hammer down on the soft tyre. This is where he can really maximise the soft tyre versus the medium. On the opening lap I managed to pull out about 4 seconds, and at the beginning of this lap he was 4 seconds behind me. So I knew that I was in danger here. I knew I was in danger of being caught, and that this race would not be an easy one from here to the end. Now if you watch the race of the first round of this series, I did manage to hold off a couple of fast charging cars towards the end of the race at Road Atlanta and managed to pull off a miraculous victory. We're looking to try and do the same here as we come here through Lance Garden, really dragging the wheel over the curb. Not the best line at all. We lost a couple more tenths. It was about 1.7 and suddenly it goes down to 1.1. So more than half a second lost and surrendered very quickly. And this is the closest he's been since the very beginning of the race. And he has a very big chance here of getting in the slipstream. And this is the crucial phase of the race, I think. Anything onto the Dottinger and then onto the Grand Prix circuit is where the overtakes are most likely to happen. It's quite difficult to overtake elsewhere on this track. And so I was really worried by this point. Coming through Galgenkopf, we need to get a good run here. Unfortunately, I was a little bit too far back from the Spaniard in the lead, as he was about 2.1 ahead. I'm not quite in their slipstream, but absolutely here, the Portuguese driver is in my slipstream. So this could be a very troublesome straight that we have to deal with here, with perhaps a bit of defending at the other end of it. Spaniard there just eking off into the distance. He is going to go into the pit lane at the end of this lap. So he's not going to be a factor for the win here, or for this overtake, which is coldly brewing as we go under the Bilstein Bridge. Which side is he going to go? He's going to go to the right hand side. 2 wheels on the grass, just gets past. And I'm going to go aggressive here around the outside. A bit of door banging. But we go aggressive, manage to get the position back and retake the lead of the race, or what will be the lead of the race, in just a moment when the Spaniard goes in. But this isn't over yet as we cross the line to begin the 5th and final lap of the race. Is there going to be another opportunity? Presumably so, on the Grand Prix circuit into turn 1. I'm going to have to cover it off and go defensive. Really easy to overshoot this. Keep the brakes on, park it on the apex, make sure they can't get past. Now just thinking back to lap number 2 of this race, I only managed to pull about 1 second on the soft tyre compared to the medium. And so obviously this is the reversal of that situation, and so it should be okay. I would think I should be able to fight this off now, but let's see, as we have actually really poor connection hitting the lobby. All of us go to red connection, so we're in danger of this race just ending prematurely anyway through the shoddy servers as of late on Gran Turismo 7. They've not been perfect at all. But we still have 1 lap left to go, and a long lap at that, to try to keep this guy at bay, keep him behind. It's not going to be easy at all, and of course if he stays with me, he has every chance of slipstreaming through on the Dottinger right at the end of the race. So it's going to be a tricky one. This is a tricky position to be in. I know I'm in first, which is the position to be in. But around this circuit, it's never simple when it comes to the tactics of trying to win. Now coming through here, he was still right on me, 2 tenths behind. This is Flugplatz at the top of this hill, and I absolutely locked in here. Look at this, slight quarter lift on the throttle, right to the edge of the track, carried so much speed. He was only 2 tenths behind there, and there was every chance that he was going to slipstream through on this part of the track, which is a long flat out section towards this left-hander here, Schwedenkreuz, into Arenberg. So I did just enough there to keep him behind by taking a very, pretty much perfect corner, doing just enough to keep that gap around about half a second. And into this section here, this is towards Kallenhard at the bottom of this hill, just making a mistake on the curb there, just running 2 wheels onto the grass on the left hand side. Just the driving becoming a little bit more ragged here. The 296 is a really solid car, it's a fast car, there's no question about it. However, I noticed this on the first round at Road Atlanta, that it becomes a little bit sketchy when the tyres begin to wear out. So coming up the hill, this is yet another opportunity for a car to slipstream through, and once again the gap is just beginning to open up. We're doing just enough here to keep him at bay, and I'm still nervous about that big chance at the end of the lap. The Dottinger is of course the best chance to get an overtake done. There's not much you can do about it if someone is right on your tail on that part of the track. So ideally I'm going to have to open up another half a second, or get very tactical and perhaps let him through to slipstream back past him. That's where the interesting tactics can come into play here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This is brewing up to be a rather brilliant race. We have one of these races kind of every couple of months on Gran Turismo. It's happened on GT Sport, it's happened on GT7, and it's really good when you have these really close battles with someone else, and quite clearly we're very evenly matched. So never mind that I'm in a slightly lower level lobby than normal, I've still found someone here to have a really good battle against. And into this final, let's say third of this lap, of the final lap, again this sequence of the track, feeling really confident through here, and he's not really going to be close enough, nor is this a good overtaking part of the track anyway, but we really do just need to open up that gap as much as possible. He actually has a wide line there, loses a couple of attempts, and so that gap is just beginning to slowly increase as he has another massive moment on the exit of Ice Curve, living up to its name I suppose, as we drop down the hill into Plantsgarten and towards this Schraubenschwanz section after the Stefan Beloff S at the bottom of this hill. This is where he was actually gaining on me quite a lot throughout the entirety of this race. I'm always monitoring the gap. I'm 1.2 ahead, and through here, through this right-hander into the left, and then into the mini carousel, he's actually gaining quite a lot on me on every lap so far. And so I was still not sure that this race was over or not. But thankfully he didn't really have the best run. I think those soft tyres, perhaps he just began to overwork them slightly on this second lap. It just shows you the difference between the first and the second lap. I noticed this in qualifying, that they do go off quite quickly actually. And thankfully I've done just enough to keep him at bay. His gap, or the gap, is 1.3, and that is really just the beginning fringes of where slipstream becomes effective, and he's not really going to be able to gain enough from that far back. And so this was one of those races where you're looking backwards constantly, looking at that gap, seeing that the number is coming down. At one point he did actually manage to get through, albeit for a couple of seconds, at the bottom of this hill 2 laps ago. But thankfully we've done just enough to keep him at bay, not succumb to the pressure as much as pressure he did apply, and thankfully come through for a sensational win for the boys and girls back at Maranello. Yes, come on, what a win! Oh my goodness, that was so stressful. The boys and girls back at Maranello, gotta be happy with that one too. Pole position, fastest lap, clean race. We've got to take that. That was a good performance, I think. And here's the confirmation of the score, 263, so a solid bank of points there. We go over the 500 barrier. Join me for round 5 very soon. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.